What's going on, everybody? Cheers. Happy Wednesday, or whatever day of the week it is when you're watching or listening to this. Welcome to this week's episode of the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go around with her own two hands. I am your host, Bogey. Welcome. I'm really excited about tonight's episode. We're going to be joined by Michelle Fields, who has navigated not just one, but two incredibly male dominated fields in her career. She's an OG. She's been around the block a long time. She's definitely paid her dues and paved her own path within these male dominated trades. So I'm really excited to talk to her. She's also somebody who I've gotten to know and work with quite a bit through the all-female build that we're doing at Girl Gang Garage in partnership with our sponsor for tonight's episode, who also happens to be Michelle's employer, which is how we got to meet each other. So you'll hear us talk about Drive Time quite a bit. They've been one of our partners in this podcast for a couple of years now, and we're very grateful for their partnership. Not just what they do within their organization to really actively promote and seek out increasing diversity. All the stuff that they do behind the scenes to really help bring more technicians up within the industry and create more opportunities for women and other minorities. They're really doing some great work. So if you're looking for a new car, or a new to you car, I guess I should say, or a new place to call your home as a career, definitely go check them out. I've got a link down in the description below so you can learn more about them. But for now, I want to thank you guys, most importantly, for being here every week to meet these incredible women, to learn more about their stories and their experiences, their challenges, their wins, to celebrate along with them, but most importantly, to normalize seeing women in the trades. You guys are a part of this revolution, and we're trying to normalize this so that one day shows like this are not necessary, that we're all just folks who work in the trades. Some of us are men, some of us are women, and that it ain't no thing but a chicken wing. But for right now, we still make up about 2% of all automotive trades people and less than 10% across all of the industrial trades. So the show is definitely still needed. Women in the trades rarely get their praises sung and rarely get a light shown on them. So that's what this show is all about. And I'm really grateful for each and every one of you for being a part of this. So thank you and welcome. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on tonight's guest, Miss Michelle Fields. Hello, darling. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. You have been in the industry, the automotive industry, for how many years now? Ish.
2008, doing it professionally.
Okay.
Before
And then,
that, I always worked on my stuff.
of course. And then prior to being automotive, what was your past career?
I worked in the semiconductor industry. Um, so I went. So when I graduated high school, I wanted to become a mechanic because I worked with my dad in the garage all the time. He always said back then girls were required to take home ec and boys were required to take shop. And my dad's like, they got it so wrong. It needs to be the opposite. The boys need to take the home ec, the girls need to take the shop and stuff. And so when I got a car, he's like, you ready to drive? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I'm going to let you know. It's your responsibility. You will do the repairs. I will help if you need guidance, but you will do the repairs.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it was really awesome. I wish more parents could do that.
Yeah, that's
But
not the
yeah,
norm. Especially back then, that wasn't the norm because you and I are of similar age. Like that back in the day, that was very unusual to have fathers not just like okay with, but like actively encouraging their girls to learn this stuff.
yes, I was
Do you
very
know
lucky.
do you know what the reasoning was? Like what motivated that in him?
Well, my dad always thought, he always told me I could be whatever I wanted to be. And he's like, if you want to be an astronaut, go be an astronaut. If you want to be a mechanic, so it's a hard life, but go be a mechanic, you know? Um, and so when getting back to the story though, I was 18 and I went to UTI, I think it was, or the other one. And the amount of money they wanted at that time was just like unheard of for somebody 18, you know? I
Right.
was like, I'm not gonna go into debt that much. And so I checked out trade school because my second choice was I wanted to work for Motorola. So I checked.
Why? Like, what
I had neighbors that worked for Motorola and my
okay.
friends, families, mom or dad that worked for Motorola. They always raved about the company. And so I wanted to work, there. And you worked with your hands all day or all night was my case.
Okay, so because I was gonna say it's not like, a specific thing like working for Motorola or something that like the average 18-year-old is gonna come up with unless they're exposed to it. So that makes sense. So you had people who you knew who were doing this kind of work because that's a very
Yeah.
unusual career path for an 18-year-old to like to seek out.
Well, I mean, that the future was coming. So I'm in a good spot. But ironically enough, I faced the same stuff at High Tech Institute with the guys. I was the only girl in the class. I never got to build a circuit until second quarter when I demanded. Now everything was partnered up, and I demanded from my teacher. I'm like, "Look, I'm paying for this. I want to be my own lab partner." I'm like, "I have yet to build a circuit, and they just want me to do all the math for them." And I'm like, "What good is that?"
Interesting.
So he was like, "You know what? You're right." So did it that way, and I went through tech school, and then Motorola. Actually, I filled out an application with them and went into their office, gave them a resume, and they hired me right away.
Awesome.
So it was,
Okay,
yeah,
so the school, or at least your colleagues, your fellow students weren't all that accepting, but at least the industry, at like the hiring folks were okay with you being female. Do you mind me asking what decade this is? Like when or what time frame are we looking at?
early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay, so the early 90s and the computer technologies. That was what it was called, computer technology?
Yeah, but
What?
let me like right after I graduate, okay, we're building stuff, we're programming, machinery to run and all this stuff like that. Not even 6 to 9 months after that, here came the internet. All user friendly, all these apps, and I just looked, I'm like, well, I guess I can just be happy it got me in the door at Motorola, but it really just kind of everything they taught me just kind of went away, except for, the basics of all electricity and all that stuff.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, it's that's one of the challenges with technology, right? Like we're especially this time that we live in now, like technology is changing so ridiculously fast. And especially when you and I were coming up, it wasn't just like, okay, there's a new app or things are going faster or they're getting smaller. It was like we saw floppy disks all the way up to right, like micro SD cards to, now we've got 2 terabytes in the cloud and like it's just constantly changing, like the platform's changing. And so there's like this interesting thing where we think about the trades as being like jobs that can't ever be outsourced, that can't be taken away from you because it's knowledge that you own and you have and it's in your hands and it's, you know, but with technology, like there are changes and if you don't keep up with it, you can lose it. You can get left behind.
Well, apparently the school knew nothing about the internet coming. So,
I don't think anybody really knew quite was about to hit the world. It kinda took off like wildfire. But there's still obviously, there's still a lot of, like, what you learned in that that's still applicable and you still utilize,
oh yeah.
even to this day at Girl Gang Garage. But, so how long of a program was it?
For high tech,
Yeah,
it was a year. It was just a 2 year associate's degree, but
okay.
you're able to do it in a year because you do 5 hours a day.
Oh, okay, okay.
2 hours of
And
lecture, 2 hours of lab,
how were the
lunch.
teachers with you? The fellow students weren't cool with you. How were the teachers?
Oh, the teachers were awesome with me too.
Mm.
They were, because, hey, I was opening up and stepping up and being a girl, and I guess they wanted to bring more women into the trades. And so they were very accepting. So at first when I approached him about being my lab partner, he's like, "But the rules say," I'm like, "But we're not in that situation because they're not letting me." I swapped partners halfway in the first thing, thinking the next guy would let me, and he didn't let me either. And I just don't know if they were really bad at math and just needed me to do the math for them or what. So,
Or they just didn't want to let you get hands on.
so it's
A little bit of
yeah,
both.
I think it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a lot of math.
So you learned very quickly that you really had to advocate for yourself in order
Mm,
to get ahead. Was that something that had always come naturally to you, advocating for yourself like that, or is that something that you had to learn real fast being in this position?
No, I'm pretty outspoken. If I see something, I do it. It's just how it is. I'm not going to let anybody stop me. This is my life too.
Were you always that way though?
Yeah.
Came out that way. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Yes. Clearly dad was on a mission to raise some strong women. So that's he was successful in that with you. That's awesome. Okay. So you go to work for Motorola. How was working in the field there? Were you the minority still, like you were in school, or were there more women?
No, lots
Okay.
of women. It
Interesting.
was like 50-50. Yeah. We were working, inside the semiconductor fab. We wore bunny suits, so you were covered head to toe, a lot of things. You couldn't wear deodorant, couldn't wear perfume, couldn't, all this stuff. So we were all in our suits. So half the time, you probably couldn't even tell who you were talking to until you heard their voice. Um,
Interesting.
but lots of women were in there, and I loved working at Motorola. And when everything happened, Motorola had to pack up and leave, close down here. It's a family owned business. So they were, just trying to survive the industry. Everything had went overseas to be made and stuff. And so, I mean, I was devastated. I absolutely loved that job. That
Yeah.
I did not mind the night shift. I didn't mind any of that. I loved the job. And so they did offer me to pull me to Texas to work there, but I was 20, 22, 23 at the time. I'd even been 24. I had kids, and I was like, I have no family there. I have no support system. I thanked them, and I said, and they're like, "Well, in the future, if you ever move," and I'm like, "Trust me, I will keep that in mind. But right now, I need to stay where I have support."
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. What was it about the job that you loved so very much?
It was a production environment. Um, but they were okay. People talk about diversity now. Back in the 90s, I was on the Motorola diversity team. you know, I mean, we had transgenders who worked there, who worked up in the corporate office, and they were very aware not to judge a book by its cover. And I really liked that.
That's awesome. I love what you brought up too about like people being in the bunny suits and like you don't even know who you're talking to necessarily, or what they may look like, or what gender they are, or what nationality, or just like any of that. Like that's kind of really cool because it's like a neutralizer. It takes all of that out of
Hmm.
the equation when everybody is in a weird bunny suit to avoid static shock. I
Yeah.
love it. Interesting byproduct. I like it. Very cool. Okay, so Motorola job ends, and you are faced now with what's next. Um,
I took some years off, raised
okay,
my kids,
okay,
and then I went to Rio Salado
okay.
and decided, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And so I enrolled in their automotive program and did that. Yeah, there were other girls in the class, like 8 other girls, and so while we
That's
were
impressive.
doing
That's a lot.
yeah, yeah, and while we were doing it, you know, you were able to do your ASEs at the same time, and so I had 8 girls who didn't know what a volt, what an amp, what any of that was, and the teacher was kinda struggling with that. I'm like, "I'm gonna tutor these guys. I'm gonna make this my mission. I'm gonna teach these guys so they can pass the test." And so I grilled them every day with flashcards, questions, drawings, everything. And all 8 of those girls passed.
That's awesome.
I think only one of them actually went into the automotive field after. But they had the basic knowledge that applies to other areas.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How big of a program was it in total that there were 8 women in the program?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had a shop. They were
Okay.
working on city vehicles.
Okay.
So, I mean, it wasn't like UTI, I heard, was everything was staged, you know. Where I went, it was real life. It was figure it out.
Yeah.
You had a teacher, and Mr. Markle was amazing. I loved him. And he would be like, "Well, what do you think? Why do you think that?" He'd really get you thinking about it to explain it to him how you got to where you got and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
he's like, "I absolutely love teaching women so much more than men because they'll listen, they'll ask questions, they don't have an ego. He doesn't have to worry about that. They don't get so mad that they break things." And so, yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, not always, right? Like, there's definitely exceptions to every rule, but, he's not wrong for the most part. Um, so it was a relatively small program, it sounds like, and yet such a large percentage of women. That fascinates me. Were they actively seeking out trying to have more female students at the time? Because like when I went to UTI, it was like 3,000 guys and there were 7 girls out of 3,000, and you had 8 out of not nearly so many, I'm sure.
yeah, their class, it wasn't the class that I enrolled in. It wasn't that big. It was mostly women, and so it just, I
Interesting.
guess, just happened that
Just
way.
happened. Interesting.
Just happened that way. And
Okay.
so, but it was good. I still see them on Facebook and chit chat, but yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the decision to go back for automotive at this point, like versus continuing in tech or in computers and learning the new technologies, was that ever a consideration after Motorola ended? And I mean, I know you took a break to raise your kids a little bit. Did you consider staying with computer tech?
I did, because I could have went into the tech side and fixed the machines and done the maintenance on the machines and all that good stuff like that. But I was like, if I'm ever gonna do it, it's now or never. So I either do it or I don't.
And you
And
really
so
always wanted it, wasn't it?
I've
Like
always
automotive
wanted it.
was
It
always it.
always just kind of bugged me in the back of my
Mhm.
mind. So I just went ahead and did it.
All right. I love it. Okay, so you go to this program, you graduate from the program, and it's time to try to find a job.
Um,
Tell me how this goes.
I have been to many an interview, and it always, well, like one in particular, which my company happens to be partners with, but that's fine.
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to say that name. Um, my husband's best friend worked there, and he's like, "I want you to go apply. Here's the stuff. Go apply." And so I went and applied. I went to the interview, and I thought it went great. And then they told me that they had found somebody else they were going to go with. Okay. And so he's asking his boss, why didn't they hire her? She's really good. And he goes, she's high risk. And he's like, how is she high risk? I've been, to prison and all these different times and charges and stuff like that. And he goes, how is she high risk? And he goes, that's just what they told me. And so, of course, high risk because I'm a female and they can't necessarily think they can control what their men say to me. Um, so unfortunately, they deemed me that and I didn't get the job. So,
And this was when? What time period was this?
oh, this was like 2009, 10, something
Okay, so
like that.
not that incredibly long ago.
Nope.
Ah, and it still happens to this day. I mean, I think that's the thing that people like. Most shops that doesn't happen in, or I'd like to think it's most shops, but there's still plenty where that does happen, and I think people like to think that it's not happening anymore, but there's so many women who've experienced that very same thing, like specifically not being hired because of that, and that's such a common it's such a common, like, fear that I hear from male shop owners is that, like, fear of if I hire a woman, I might get sued. And it's just
Mm-mm.
it's fascinating to me where, I don't know. I don't know how we get rid of that fear in
Yeah,
men.
I don't either.
It's a real interesting one because the fear, like you said it, like he was afraid of what his other guys would say to you and how they would treat you, right? Versus like having the mindset of maybe if we just create a work environment that's like respectful of everybody, like you worked at Motorola, men and women work together. Like men and women have been working together for decades, all in all sorts of various career paths and fields. Why is it
Yeah.
so concerning in the automotive industry that people are like, "Oh my gosh, we can't have men and women working together." Like it's this novel thing that's never happened before. It's very bizarre to
I
me.
just think the guys want to keep it to themselves. That's what I
For as much as they complain about it, why do they want to keep it to themselves?
because then they can be your hero.
Oh, is that what it is?
I,
Maybe.
that's part of it.
Maybe. Interesting. Okay, so if you had to guess, how many interviews did you have to go to before you found somebody willing to give you a chance?
It's probably 8
Okay.
interviews. And then my best friend at the time, she was dating the gentleman who ended up hiring me, but she had said, come on over, we're gonna barbecue. She goes, I'll introduce you to Danny. He owns the shop. And let you guys talk and see how it goes. And, I've let him know that you're looking for a job and you're having a really hard time finding one. And I was like, okay. So I went to over to her house and we barbecued and all this stuff. And me and him talked. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna think about it and I'll give you a call, in the next 24 hours. So come the next evening, my dad had a rule of no answering the cell phones at the dinner table. And so we're sitting down eating dinner, and I see that it's him. And I look at my dad, I'm like, I might be getting a job. Can I please answer the phone? He's like, yes, go. So Danny's like, you know what? Show up tomorrow. We'll give this a whirl. And it was just, he was the shop owner, his brother worked for him, and me.
Okay. So a small shop.
A small shop that we got anything to everything, every kind of make and model of car, because his prices were so fair, sometimes too fair. but but yeah.
Awesome. And so you were fresh out of school. I mean, we all know that you come out of school like we know how to learn and we know some stuff, and you'd kind of grown up tinkering on cars, so you knew some stuff, but that's very different than actually like being legit.
Oh
So
yeah.
he took a
Oh yeah.
chance to bring on somebody newer and a girl,
Green.
and sounds like his first,
Green.
was it his first employee?
No, he had his brother. Him and his
Well,
brother always
I
worked
guess
together.
non-family employee, I should say.
Non-family. No, he had other
Okay.
techs that had come and gone. Um, but I think I was the one who lasted the longest because kind of find out him and his brother would have fights and tools would go flying. And
Oh, geez.
one time, the first time my tools went flying, I just walked in there. I'm like, I don't care what you guys do, but you will not throw my tools. I paid way too much money for these tools. So throw your own stuff. And I walked out and walked over to the other day and let them handle it.
Oh
But
my. Interesting.
I was green. I mean, I came out of school all cocky, I had my ASCs and I know all this stuff, and then you get in there and it's just like, and this guy's expecting you to do all this stuff in a quick amount of time, and I was just like, holy heck, I am green. But Danny was wonderful. He taught me all the old man tricks and all those things that some of these younger techs I like, and they're just like, "What are you talking about?" Like, never mind. you know, all the old test equipment where you had to have it for each different kind of make and make. So all the way down to how to count those stupid lights on the computer to figure out the codes.
Old school.
Old school.
And you guys worked on all makes and models, everything.
All makes and models. So when I would ask a friend a question who worked like on Hondas and Toyotas, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't work on that." I'm just like, "It's a car." The basics are the same,
Yeah.
I just shake my head, and I don't know if that's what they used. They thought they were using that as an excuse, or they were afraid the answer that they gave me wouldn't be correct, and then I
Mm,
would find out. You know what I mean? Because I know Danny would always, once a month, we would go for training that the auto stores would do or
mhm.
the dealerships would do. He'd always sign us up for that. And I
That's
remember we were
awesome.
in a basic electrical paths and the teacher's asking questions. And these guys won't answer. They're just dead quiet. Finally, I just start shouting out the answers. And I hear, "Oh, we got ourselves a little diagnostic queen in here." And I just turn, I'm like, "Hun, it's basic electricity." And so my boss nudges me and he's like, "See how quiet the room stays." So
And well, that goes back to your point that you made before, right? About the that girls don't have the ego necessarily and all of that. And I find that a lot, like in the classes I would watch that word, like it, nobody's asking questions until the girl is willing to ask a question. And then all the guys are like, "Oh, okay, we can, it's safe. It's safe to ask questions and acknowledge that we don't know things." But like until that moment, they're like, "Oh, I know this already. I know this. This is." But
mhm,
that ego kicks in for sure.
yeah.
I love it. And I love that you weren't afraid to just like put them in their place.
No, it's actually kind of fun. At least
So
back then.
how long was it before you felt comfortable as a technician, like where you felt like that confidence? So you had that awakening or that like eye-opening experience of realizing like, "Oh my gosh, I am totally green, not as skilled as I thought I was coming out of school." How
It
long
took
did
a
it take before
couple
you
of
got to that
years.
place? Yeah?
A couple of years because we didn't work on the same stuff. We worked on completely different things. And so one day I'd have a beat up old Honda in there, and the next day I might have an RX-7 in there, brand new. So I never knew. So I had to learn all the models and stuff. And they're things, a lot of them have things that you check first because that's usually the usual culprit. Um, but about 2 years into it is where I started, like, I was checking my boss's brother's work.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty
So
quick. 2 years to get to that place of feeling confident, that's actually pretty quick. That's impressive.
yeah, I did a lot of. So his brother always built the engines, did like the big timing jobs and engine swaps and stuff like that. And I was his diagnostic, electrical, everything computer.
Makes sense.
Was what he counted on me for. And then if I didn't have any of that work, then yeah, I was doing the other stuff too.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that makes
Danny was
sense.
awesome.
I love it. Side note for anybody who's listening in the audio version and not watching this on camera, you're missing out on Michelle's adorable dogs kind of like in the background having a field day. They're super cute.
Thank you. My babies.
I, I love it. One of them was just like rolling around for like 10 minutes solid, just like in heaven. I love watching dogs play. It's great. Okay, so how long were you at Danny's?
Um, I ended up leaving August of 13
Okay.
because I had donated a kidney to my mother.
Oh,
And
no small feat
no
there.
matter
That's
so
huge.
no matter how much Pedialyte and Gatorade I drank, I just couldn't put it into me as fast as it was coming out of me, and I would just get really bad migraines.
Oh my goodness.
So finally I told Danny, I'm like, I can't work. My head hurts so bad I can't work.
Mm,
I have to figure something else out.
yeah.
And so yeah, that was
That's
devastating too.
yeah. I mean, that's a huge life-changing thing to do and decision to make.
Yeah, I really didn't have a choice. And so I tried my hand at service writing, and the gentleman who hired me for the owners was really slick, to put it mildly.
What do you
You
mean?
know, your car might, burn up if you don't do this repair and da 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 da. And
Oh, that.
it just, I could not handle that. I'm just looking, I'm like, you know what? If somebody is coming in here, and for first they started off, they came in here for a $20 oil change, and you talk them into this, and then you start laying, $4,000 and $5,000 worth of recommended work, and if you don't do it in such an amount of time, this will happen or that'll happen. I'm like, if I was them, I would never come to you again, because somebody who's coming for a $20 oil change cannot afford three and four and $5,000 repairs because it's recommended for time, or mileage.
Right. Well, and scaring them into it is definitely not the way
Yeah.
to do
So
it.
I
That
I wrote I gave my notice to the owner, super sweet guy, and he was I thought I was doing him a favor because I wasn't selling all these shocks and all this stuff like that. Um, and he finally left me a note on the computer on my last day, and he's like, "It breaks my heart to see you go," and he's like, "You've never let me down," and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm not a salesperson. It's just not in me.
well,
You tell me no, okay, bye. I don't have a pushy bone that way. I'm like, okay, I get it. Bye.
well, it's a shame because I feel like there's a happy medium in between there, right? Like what this other guy was doing was scare
Well, he
tactics.
was my role model too, because I'd never been a service
You
writer.
didn't
And
know. Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is
Yeah.
not for me. It's not gonna work. And then what would be so
Yeah.
funny is he's like, it's really bad idea to put a technician at the front desk, you know, because then you're gonna be diagnosing the cars. I'm like, if you want me to diagnose a car, I won't diagnose a car. But I would get jobs that the employees couldn't do. Like
Mm.
I had to do have a wheel bearing done, pressed in and pressed out. And God's like, hey, you're gonna have to send them somewhere else. We can't do this. We can't find the right size. And I'm like, give me a second. I walk out there and like, this goes here, this will go here. And they're like, no, that won't work. And I'm like, you know what? Go entertain the customer. I'll do it. And then the owner's walking in. He's like, Michelle, I told you you're not supposed to be dirty. You're supposed to be at the counter, being pretty. And I'm like, if I didn't do it, I was going to have to send the job away because the other guys couldn't do it. And he was like, okay, continue on.
There's so much in that. Like, we could spend an hour just talking about that exchange. That's
Yep.
fascinating. I I
Yeah.
feel like in that little bit, you just encapsulated, like, so many of the challenges that the industry faces, like, so many of the stereotypes, so many of the image issues that we're trying to fight, right? This idea of the fact that the way to be a service advisor is to pressure people into doing things and to scare them into doing things, and the challenges between front of house and back of house and technicians versus service advisors, and that statement of you're supposed to just be upfront being pretty. Oh my gosh. There's so much here, Michelle. This is so rich. You've had some experiences.
Well, it's better is when it comes from your own family. So when
Okay.
I was doing my job searches, striking out, um, my family owns, we call it the lot because it's a mobile home business. And my grandpa, it's a family business. So my grandpa and my aunt and uncle and all them are always there. My aunt and uncle have always been my biggest supporters.
Nice.
My grandfather, he's, older guy. And so when I was looking for a job, he's just like, Michelle, you might as well go get a job at McDonald's. Ain't no shop going to hire you, blah, 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 blah. I would never hire you if I was, if I owned a shop. And it crushed me that my own grandpa would say this to me. And so I went for an interview, hadn't heard results yet. I came back because my mom worked for my uncle. And so I was talking to my mom. And then my grandpa comes out and he's like, Michelle, come look at something. And he's like, I've been working trying to get this truck going all day. And he goes, I don't know why it won't. And so I walk over, I grab a screwdriver, I unplug the coil, put the screwdriver in there, and I'm like, try to start it. And nothing, no spark. And I said, oh, you need one of these, Grandpa. And I turned around and walked away. I was still mad. I was really mad at him. And then after that, he became my biggest supporter. He told all his friends. He called me on everything that went wrong with his cars. To the point I was like, maybe I shouldn't have been so so direct like that. So quick.
No, that's perfect. It's funny. I interviewed a woman many, many moons ago now who said her tactic when she started at a new job was always to find the oldest, grumpiest man in the shop and win him over. Like, do whatever it took to win him over because the guy that's most resistant to women doing this work, once he comes around, becomes the biggest advocate and the biggest ally, right? Like,
Yeah,
he just needed to
she's a
see it.
smart woman.
Yeah. So that was your grandpa, right? Like, he was the oldest,
Yeah,
grumpiest man who didn't think that you should be doing this, but once you won him over, it was like, "Oh, a whole new world."
yeah.
Interesting. None of this ever intimidated you or held you back or caused you pause? Like, you
It hurt
encountered
my
so much.
feelings. It hurt my feelings. Like it really bothered me in that aspect. Because you got to remember, I came from Motorola. Everybody was accepted. It didn't matter, your background. It didn't matter any of this stuff. Okay. None of that mattered. What you brought to the table as far as skills and, showing up and doing a great job, that was all we all cared about, So it was devastating in that aspect. Very hurtful,
Yeah,
and here it was years later.
yeah. So what made you keep going and persevering through that?
Because no man is going to stop me from doing what I want. It's my life. If I want to do it, if I want to learn it, I'm going to do that. I have
Okay,
just as much rights as they do.
absolutely. So I'm curious, have you thought at all about do you have a gut feeling about why there's such a huge difference in these two very like trades-based jobs. They're both very tactile. They're both very like STEM-based learning. Why was one so much more accepting than the other?
I think they just think the strength wise and stuff like that is really what I think. What it boiled down to, they didn't think we could break the bolts loose and they didn't think we could do this and we could do that, you know? I think that's where most of it comes from. And some of the ones that actually are nice guys would tell me, you don't want to do this. It's a hard life. You know, everything hurts, everything creaks.
Well, they're not
And
wrong about that. That part's
I
true.
know I kind of wish I would listen to him because it hurts getting up and down these days.
It
You know,
sure does. I wish I'd listened to that part of it because they're not wrong. This is not easy
nope,
work.
they're not wrong. It's not easy work. And, you know, but the reward was awesome,
Yeah.
you know, and it's kind of dirty. And I don't think they really want to see the women get dirty back then. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the like it's the perception that it's a strength issue and it's a dirty field. And like both of those just make me laugh because when you really think about them from a logical standpoint, strength, I can use leverage, I can use tools. Like I remember somebody asking me when they interviewed me how I was going to handle heavy stuff like a transmission, and I was like, with a transmission jack, like anybody else does. Like I'm not picking it up by myself. Who is, right?
right.
And then the dirty is like there's a lot of dirty jobs that women are totally expected to do, and nobody is worried about us getting dirty cleaning toilets or changing diapers.
Right.
But there's concern about us getting dirty working on cars. So
Yep.
but I think you're right. I think you're right. It's the strength and the dirtiness. And at Motorola, you didn't have any of that because it was clean.
No, it was a clean room. So it was very clean.
Yeah. It was clean and it was precision and it was small stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, everybody had their machines that they ran and you know, making the wafers and all that.
Yeah.
And so it was it just was it's just completely kind of opposite, you
Yeah.
know. But I love it when, you know, my work does a lot of the diversity stuff and I love it, but I just sit there thinking, you know, some of the speakers act like this is like a new concept. I'm like, I was doing this in the 90s,
I know, well,
you
I think
know?
that's the sad part. Like, this is not a new struggle. This is not a new fight, and yet we're still fighting the same fight, that the challenges that young women are facing are not that different than the challenges that you and I faced coming up decades prior, that we're still not
I would
making any
hope
progress.
I would hope there's been a little bit of progress.
I think there has been. I think the scales are tipping, right? But I still hear I hear more and more women who are having positive experiences, but I still hear too many women who are having similar experiences that you and I had. And I guess you've been in this for a while now. Um, do you feel like things are changing? Do you feel like there's hope? Are we ever going to get to
Well,
that place where Motorola was?
I mean, drive time is like that. I mean, and so I started with the company back in 18, but I started on the other side, the sister company, doing being a claims adjuster, where they would call in. Everybody who answered the phones were previous technicians. It was a running joke that that's where technicians go to retire,
It's
and
fair.
so I mean, I had like the call in from some of the shops. I would get this like, I bet you've never even opened up a hood. And I'd just take a breath and I'd be like, okay, let's start over. You know, thanks for calling Silver Rock. This is Michelle. I am an AC certified technician. How may I help you? You know, I would get it from some of the shops, but the company itself and the other men claims adjusters and drive time too at the RC, they will come to me for advice. They don't judge me. They don't, you know, worry that I'm a girl. They don't, I don't see any of that. And I absolutely adore that.
Yeah, that's I mean, people hear me say this, in every other episode when I talk about Drive Time as one of our partners is how, like, diversity isn't something that just happens, right? Like, you have to seek it out. You have to actually take action to do things to let people know that they are welcome and to create space for them. What do you what is it from your perspective that they're doing that makes it so that you have that environment and that you don't feel like is it who they hire? Is it how they create their culture? What do you think it is?
It's mostly the culture and the things that they consistently, offer classes on it and different types of diversity. Back, I will say this, back at Motorola, it was mostly ethnical diversity, because we had, people from all every race, everything you could think of. And so now it has branched out to diversity. It can be, the man, the woman thing, and it can be all kinds of things. So in that aspect, it has changed or became more well-rounded. But they continuously offer things that you can sign up, classes you can take, and not really classes, it's more like seminars that you
Okay.
do online.
Okay.
Um, and you participate in those, and it's just a really good thing to do. A good, especially if you're feeling like, hey, was I wrong in that thing? You can actually reach out to those people and talk to them. So they have the support there for their employees, and they keep, the educational part of it active.
Yeah. I think it's companies like Drive Time, and not for this to become like a commercial for them by any stretch, but like it's companies like Drive Time, and there are other companies out there. There's lots of smaller companies that really are making those changes and taking the lead in showing what it could be like. And that's what gives me hope. And seeing a company like Drive Time, which is so massive, like, they're a big piece of the industry, and for them to be as progressive in kinda trying to change the culture of what the automotive industry looks like is really refreshing to see, and that's what gives me hope, I think.
Yes.
So, you were at Silver Rock. That's a change. You went from wrenching to, like you said, this is where mechanics go to retire. Yeah. So, how how was that? I know your personality, like, you wanted to be out there
The
wrenching.
Yeah. Well, no, at that point, I was when I worked for Danny, I worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and then I had teenage boys at home, and I was a single mom. So I was kind of over it. I was just like, I just need a desk job now. My knees hurt. Everything hurts now, creaks, cracks. And so when I got over to them, I was like, okay. But then it was a whole new thing, a whole new trade in kind of within that trade that I had to learn.
Yeah.
Um, but but I did still, come across things like, they call in, they give you their diagnosis, and you'd be going through going, I need you to check this. And they're just like, my technician's been doing this for 25 years, and if that's what he says it is, that's what it is. I go up to it, and I'll never forget this. I went to my manager. I'm like, "Can I transfer this guy to you?" I'm like, "He is not hearing it. I'm a female. He's not hearing it." He looks at me and goes, "I don't care who he is. He either listens to you or he doesn't get the job." And I'm like, "Okay." I went back over, got him the phone, tried really nice, I'm like, "Look, I really cannot do anything if you don't do this testing," and, tried to throw it on to my managers or whatever so he would, so we could get the customer's car work done. But yeah. But I loved it. When he said that to me, I was like,
Okay.
This is a great company,
Yes. Yes. That is such a theme that I've seen in like the companies that are the good companies where women have had positive experiences is when there's men who are willing to say to like have their back and say, no, 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 like he's gonna like you're the boss or you're the service advisor or you're the technician, like where they have the back of the female employees makes all the world of difference.
Yes, it does.
All the world. Okay, so we only have 10 minutes left. Oh my goodness. Hours go way too fast. Okay, so you're you're working at Silver Rock. What made you then make the change to go back over to drive time and get a little bit more hands-on and be more in the trenches again?
So when I worked at Silver Rock, I didn't just do claims, I did other aspects of the business.
Okay.
And when this position came open, I wanted to learn that. Um, how things go on with RC because I'd always hear all these things all on the calls. Oh, the car came with no air filter or something like that. And I'm just like, there's no way you know. So, and you can't say, oh, take a picture of it because all they're going to do is pull the filter out and take a picture. So I was like, I really want to get to see how things are handled on that level. So understanding that side of the business. So that's really what brought me over there. I won't lie. I was intrigued with the walking aspect of it too, because I had been working from home for um that last year and a half, something like that. And I was just like kind of over that too. When I'm
Mhm.
only doing like 3,000 steps in a day.
Yeah, you were needing to get active again. You
Yeah.
went from everything hurts, I want a desk job to like, oh my gosh, desk jobs are actually kind of boring. I need to get up and move.
I've never been one to just kind of sit still, but I'm okay with the walking. It's like sitting down for a long period of time and then getting up. That's when it's hard.
For those of you who are not yet old, don't do it. It is not for the faint of heart. Everything hurts. All right. What's what is the in the future for you? Are you happy where you're at? Do you have ambition
Oh,
and goals within
yeah.
the industry?
This is this is my home. I am I plan to retire from Drive Time Silver Rock, Bridgecrest. So I'm gonna move around in the company, learn everything I can, and do that, and just keep on trucking. I love the company, and I love the fact of how they treat the women in the fields.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Let's talk a little bit just for a couple minutes because we don't have much time left. You and I teased a little bit that you and I have met as a result of the all-female build at Girl Gang Garage. You have been deeply involved. Talk a little bit about what it means to you, why you're involved, why you're doing it, what it means to you that Drive Time is a partner on it. Just talk to me about it.
So it really hits home with me because I was a single mom of ended up being three boys. And so at any point I could see that I could have ended up how any of these women have ended up. Thankfully, I had a really, giving and caring family that I didn't end up in that route. Um, so that every time I think about it, I'm just like, oh my God, I could have been me, And so and I've always been a sucker for the underdog too. So I'm just bring it home, come on. So it's really near and dear to me. I don't like to see people go without food, so I feed people all the time. I just, I have a big heart in that aspect.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. But when guys want to push me around, then no, not happening.
Michelle is the epitome of a mama bear. She is going to take care of you, but don't hurt her babies. And
Mhm.
don't mess with her family and the people she loves, right? Total mama
Yep.
bear. So for those who don't know and haven't been following along, you must not have been paying attention, but let's fill you in a little bit real quick on the all-female build. So Girl Gang Garage obviously is my shop here in Phoenix, and the all-female build that we're doing is currently a charity build where we're taking a 2007 Honda Odyssey that we took from the salvage yard from the local U-Pull and Pay, who was kind enough to donate it to us. And we're bringing it back to life with the support of Drive Time. And it's going to have a life of service at a local charity called Maggie's Place, which is a nonprofit that serves homeless pregnant women. So, as Michelle was kind of alluding to there, and Michelle's been super, super involved. She's been one of my right hands on this build. And it's been really fantastic to get to know you and work with you. And it's just been really neat, like, and hearing more of your story now and really understanding, like, you you come to the shop and you get to be hands-on, right? And I know you haven't done that in a while, and it's really fun seeing you kind of light up when we get to take things apart and put them back together. And I know it's this part of you that just will never go away, no matter what.
Yeah. Oh no. No. I'm always curious like that. But yeah, always curious. I'll take anything. Anything breaks, I will fix it. And my husband's came home and I've had my refrigerator torn apart and I'm replacing parts inside my freezer. And he's just like, what happened? I'm like, it broke. I fixed it. Or I'm fixing it.
That's
So
awesome.
it doesn't matter what it is. I will try before I have to replace it. I will try to fix it.
All right. So in our final few moments, my final question that I always like to ask is if you could go back, if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to little baby Michelle, the younger you, what are your words of advice to her?
It's going to be tough sometimes. Buck up, don't take it so personal.
Mm,
Because there for a little while I did take it personal. So just get a thicker skin,
yeah.
you know. That was probably it. I've always done what I wanted to do. So
Yes, you have. And it served you well. You've navigated not one, but two traditionally male jobs and done a fantastic job at it. And you keep kicking butt and taking names. And uh, I'm thrilled to know you and be able to work alongside of you. So I appreciate all of your support on the build, and I so appreciate you sharing your story for everybody and sharing your passion. So thank you for saying yes and agreeing to do this. This has been awesome. As much time as we spend together, I feel like I learned so much more about you through this. So thank you.
oh, you're welcome.
And folks at home, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed meeting Michelle and hearing her story and learning all about her experiences in throughout her career, whether it's semiconductors, whether it's on the automotive side, turning wrenches, doing claims adjusting, you name it. She's kind of been in a couple of different arenas and had some really great experiences. So I hope you enjoyed meeting her and hearing her story and celebrating alongside her. Make sure you leave comments, hit like, hit subscribe. The more you tell the algorithm that you've interacted with this, the more people see these videos. And maybe the person who needs to see it most will see it and be inspired. Maybe we'll get more women into the industry as a result, or maybe that man who needs to see it with his own eyes that women are capable of this work needs to find it. So make sure you leave those comments down below and subscribe to help spread the good word. And if you're needing a little dose of inspiration, there's like 200 some odd episodes that you can go back and watch anytime. So 200 amazing women all throughout the trades that you can go check out their stories. Make sure you come back every Wednesday for another new episode and every Monday for a new release of an archive episode. And until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to one another, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.